Dimension 20 is lauded not only as one of the best actual play spaces, but one of the most accessible. However, that is not to say it's not still daunting at times, in their own way. Sure, staring down a 20-episode show is much easier than a 100 to 200 plus episodes of Critical Role, but that's still a couple dozen hours of entertainment. On top of that, you have the plentiful options at Dimension 20, which, as a person with ADHD, choice paralysis can be its own demon to conquer. So what I want to do today is set up a spoiler-free Dimension 20 Watcher's Guide. I'm going to go through season by season and talk about what the season is about, its tone, the style of gameplay you can expect, and if it's a good fit for your level of tabletop experience. But to start, a few ground rules. Number 1, this part 1 will only be covering the side quests. These are the seasons that last around 10 episodes or less. A choice few of these seasons are more literal tie-ins to larger seasons, but most of them you can honestly get by watching solo if you really want to, and I'll mention in the review if that's a good idea or not. Number 2, I'll be leaving off Shriek Week. This particular season is unfortunately tainted by the actions of its game master, and for that reason, I'm going to choose to cover this in a video on its own. Number 3, this is not a review. By the very nature of this being a spoiler-free, first-time, friendly watcher's guide, I can't get into too much depth on a lot of these shows. I am positive I will have more content in future where I will deep dive into these shows, but for now, we're going to try to stick with what new watchers need to know. I will do my best to keep content to what is needed, and footage will be only shown from the launch trailers and the introduction sequences. With that being said, even with those stipulations, we have a lot of content to get through, so let's dive in. Escape from the Bloodkeep. There's something to be said for the spirit of having just enough momentum to know what you're doing and have confidence, but still early enough you really feel the need to bring it as hard as you can. That's the spirit I get from Escape from the Bloodkeep. Escape from the Bloodkeep is an homage to the darker and spookier side of medieval fantasy, but clearly a loose parody of Lord of the Rings. Dimension 20 often uses homage and parody as a springboard, but it's notable just how perfect this combination is for them. Lord of the Rings is vast and detailed, but for the mostly movie boys like me, the villain side of things looks cool, but only goes so deep. This gives a ton of room for people to build and do whatever they want without a surprise actually coming from around the corner. From even the first couple of minutes, the tone is made incredibly clear, and it's kind of heartwarming to see that even professional tables have quote-unquote evil campaigns go the same way. The initial impression of dark and brooding seriousness quickly record scratched away by the player's irresistible desire to get silly with it. By the time the crew rounds themselves up together and gets into their first big fight, you start to realize how impactful playing for the villainous side is. There's something inherently interesting seeing the holier-than-thou angelic elves and other quote-unquote good guys get introduced and realizing they're the enemies here. The players for this game are all powerhouse performers, but shout out to Reich, who holds her own in game despite having admittedly less D&D experience compared to her fellow cast members, like Erika Ishii, Amy Vorpal, Mike Trapp, and Matthew fucking Mercer. Yeah, Matt Mercer of Critical Role gets to actually play a character for once. I honestly can't say enough about how much I love this particular group of characters and their slow building chemistry. But Matt absolutely delivers a masterclass in understanding the difference between the character on your sheet and the one the dice make for you. Not as much really to give to negatives. It is one of the earlier seasons, so it's a little lower on production values like camera quality or audio, but the minis are gorgeous as ever. It's also a shame we haven't got Amy Vorpal back in the dome since. Even Mike Trapp took quite the hiatus before he jumped back in. All in all, Escape from the Bloodkeep is classic Dimension 20 in spirit, with a little extra spice thrown in with the villain theming being a rock-solid hook to set it apart. On its own, I'd say it's a pretty welcoming introductory season, and those of you who insist on chronological order will definitely have a good time with this first impression. Tiny Heist. Tiny Heist, quite fittingly, is a charming show that I feel might get overlooked. While its inspiration is very clear when you see it laid out on the board, it does make for quite the elevator pitch to say it's Ocean's 11 meets Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It's a whole magical world taking place in the quiet backyard of a regular kid. Through a wide set of circumstances, we follow a ragtag group of mini humanoid characters, a fairy, a beetle, and a few legally distinct toys come to life as they attempt a heist with a prize that is anything but tiny. Rattling through the cast, we once again have a major outside D20 guest presence. This time with the McElroys of Mabam Bam and the Adventure Zone. Also in a fun twist, we're joined at the table by Jess Ross and Lily Dew, two more people who have only played at the Dome once. While the McElroys aren't everyone's style of humor, I thought they did a really good job finding their moments, but also sharing the spotlight around at the table. One possible negative you'll find here is that this is by far one of the most loosey-goosey seasons. You can tell, especially in comparison to Escape from the Bloodkeep, that there isn't as much of an understanding of rules or mechanics, and the players do sometimes get lost in the chaos of combat. Also, the players coming from drastically different parts of the, yard does make the putting the crew together a bit strained or forced. It is a bit of a strange contradiction, where in the season all about a plan coming together and pulling off this epic heist, we're paired with less tactical players and a bit more moon logic than usual. Tiny Heist is a charming, if a bit disjointed season that, if nothing else, I can definitely say has a very clear feel and identity all its own. And as one of the smaller seasons, pun intended, it's an easy season to kind of sneak in there during those big gaps between Dimension 20 season drops. Pirates of Leviathan. The inspiration here should seem pretty obvious. It's the realm of pirates inside of the established Fantasy High universe. We quickly assemble a crew spanning from cursed pirate legends to wannabe adventurers to a fantasy burlesque celebrity. It definitely matches Tiny Heist in the pursuit of some wild and out there characters. And while introducing them all and getting them all together is a bit of a slow burn, it makes for some great drama imagining how they will all end up being pieced together. Speaking of cast, we essentially have a full guest cast for the first time. While some of them will become dropout mainstays, we have both Matthew Mercer and Marisha Ray playing at the table together. That's a rare sight. And our first and certainly not last appearance of Abria Iyengar. I'm less familiar with Christina Ariel, but their performance as Bob is so absolutely infectious, I dearly hope they end up returning. The main negative here is unfortunate, as it's obviously completely out of their control. We've reached the first of the COVID seasons. The entirety of the show is not only virtual, but theater of the mind. I'll admit, I've grown to appreciate theater of the mind a lot more as time has gone on, and you absolutely can make it work. But for Dungeons & Dragons as a system, sometimes you really just want your maps and squares. That, and there always is going to be a level of chemistry and energy that just can't be captured from a Zoom call style game as compared to the shared table. The plot of the season can be a little dense at times. I occasionally would lose track of exactly what was going on or what elements were still in play. It's also not one of the more crunchy seasons, so go into it expecting that RP to combat scales to be tilting stronger towards roleplay. It really can't be oversold, however, that the number one hook for this season is the characters. Everyone goes all out with their choices, and once you settle into your groove, it's hard not to have a good time. Pirates of Leviathan is a great season, but the virtual nature did, at least for its original release, take a bit of wind out of its sails for me, pun intended. It's definitely on my list of seasons to take another look at, but if none of these things bother you, then obviously you have a lot to like here. Mice and Murder. You know, I have a hard time pinning down exactly what the appeal is with Mice and Murder. I guess you could say it's a mystery. Okay, well, now that I've got that out of my system, I do think there is something to be said for this being one of the more standalone feeling Dimension 20 seasons. While we're still playing 5th edition, we're dealing with new stuff at almost every turn. By far, this season has the largest number of players either new to Dimension 20 or new to Dungeons & Dragons in general. Going along with that, the old school whodunit mystery theming of this season puts far more emphasis on roleplay and social intrigue, and less in in-depth mechanics or battle math. This makes this a great pick for those looking for a more RP-based season, but also if you find yourself lost in the flood of mechanics and rules, this season is rather friendly in that regard. The majority of the cast here have not been back to the Dome since, and this makes it very unique from a casting perspective. This is, in my opinion, the smoothest of the COVID seasons. They use Roll20 to handle their spacing and maps, and from an audience perspective, it's super easy to read. For the players, letting them use Roll20 character sheets helps newer players with understanding what to roll and when. A simple click will give you a virtual dice roll, and the math is all done for you. It does seem like a bit of a cop-out to say that your enjoyment of this particular season depends on your enjoyment of the theme. You could technically say that for most of this list, but in this case, it really is the main attraction. In that way, there really quite isn't another season quite like this one, and I think as a Dimension 20 side quest, that's the best you can hope for. Misfits and Magic. Coming out of COVID felt like a reinvention and new era for Dropout as a whole, and Dimension 20 absolutely feels like it was back in the mindset of big swings and big chances. As the title would suggest, Misfits and Magic is at its core an homage and often biting critique of that series of witchcraft and wizardry that shall not be named. Leave it to Dropout and Erika Ishii in particular to best sum up their handling of this complicated relationship with the inspiring source material.
I'm just like so into Harry Potter, but also, can I say fuck turfs?
Fuck turfs.
Can I say fuck turfs?
Fuck
turfs.
Fuck turfs.
And it is, I still maintain though that there is so much in there that you know, resonated with a lot of us misfits, a lot of us kids that wanted magic and really believed in it. And I will never let that part go. But fuck turfs.
Trans rights, fuck turf.
Yeah.
Misfits and Magic was huge in the sense of how much experimenting and big chances it was taking. First of all, we've stepped away from D&D for the first time. Using the Kids on Brooms system, we embrace a whole new different era of non-D&D Dimension 20. Without getting into the weeds, Kids on Bikes, or Kids on Brooms, are systems where you roll bigger dice for skills you are better at, and rolling with the highest dice makes it quote-unquote blow up, letting you roll more dice and add that to your total. Also, Brennan is not in the GM chair. No, for the first time, during what is sometimes called in the tabletop community the Year of Abria Eingar straps into the GM chair and allows Brennan to sit down at the table as a player for the first time. I feel like the cast is kept intentionally smaller this time around to give a more intimate atmosphere, and I think that absolutely comes through. This is a season about self-discovery and adolescence and awkward teen romance, and a surprising number of bird facts. While it's fair to say the magical school aesthetic is one of the main reasons to check out this season, the players bring out the absolute best in each other. I don't know these people personally, but you absolutely get the impression of these players diving deep within themselves and incorporating a lot of their own journeys and lives into their personas. A special shout out is also needed to Brennan's performance as the awkwardly lovable Evan Kelp. While I cannot 100% speak on this, as I am possibly but not confirmed to be on the spectrum, Evan Kelp seems to have been adopted by a lot of the people in the autistic community under the all too common banner of unintentionally awesome / wholesome autistic rep that is sadly better than most of the explicit rep we actually end up getting. Abria delivers a master class as a GM. She matches everyone's energy perfectly. It's also worth acknowledging the difficulty of a setting like this, where there are just a crap ton of NPCs, often being one-off characters you're developing whole cloth on the spot. The new system does take a bit of getting used to, and I would suggest going into this expecting a more slice-of-life, story-based adventure. Kids on Brooms isn't built for epic combat like D&D is. That said, as far as accessibility goes, any of the Kids on Bike seasons makes for a great starting point for new actual play watchers. I will say that Misfits and Magic makes for a great alternative if you need to get your British school wizardry fix. Where it may lack in epic set pieces or climactic battles, it more than makes up for it in storytelling, in character, in what I would argue is one of the most emotionally intimate of Dimension 20 seasons. Additional note here, during the production of this video, Dropout announced the official Misfits and Magic Season 2, and I could not be any more excited. Just as much as I think it is a boon to have a short and sweet intro to this world, I think it's going to be amazing to see it fleshed out, and I will certainly be watching it as soon as it comes out. The Seven. The Seven is a direct tie-in to Dimension 20's original darling, Fantasy High, where the aforementioned adventuring party of the legendary The Seven find themselves approaching the potential end of their time at Eggford Adventuring Academy, and have to not only piece their lives back together and solve unspoken wounds in their friendship, but investigate deeper evil afoot in every direction. While I fully believe you can watch the season independently and get along just fine, if you want the extra context, I suggest watching at least Season 1 of Fantasy High. So you'll probably notice our biggest selling point right off the bat. This is Dimension 20's first and currently only full woman cast. We have a pleasant mix of old and new faces alongside the return of Abria Eingar to the player chair. Each of our players come from drastically different backgrounds and perspectives, which is honestly a huge benefit to them thematically, comedically, and tactically. Speaking of tactics, this may very well be the most proficient and skilled overall table in the Dome's history, and the fact that it's also the all-female season is just poetic justice. So off the bat, you're going to notice that the energy of the season is absolutely bonkers at times. While the season is overall extremely wholesome, it's also debatably the, thirstiest of the Dimension 20 seasons. Admittedly, this is a coming-of-age story, and sexuality is very much a part of that. It's just worth mentioning that part of this season is Brennan walking a tightrope with teenage characters, flirting with people they really should not be flirting with. I think he handles it spectacularly, and a lot of the raunchier humor is hilarious. But it's worth mentioning that if sexual humor in general is not your vibe, some parts of the season may not suit you the best. This is also the first season to introduce Talespire, a 3D map builder and virtual tabletop program. In the transition back to the full-scale games, this made for a good substitute for IRL miniatures, and also helps with some of the season's more complicated battle maps. More than anything, however, this season is a story about the power of female friendship. And in some cases, I mean that very literally. This season is an overall light, feel-good time with incredibly lovable cast and plenty of options for who to pick as your favorite. The 7 is an absolute standout in a series of bangers, and the fact that it very clearly shows that you can have both tactical, crunchy gameplay and emotionally resonant RP all in the same place. Coffin Run. I think the title does a lot of the heavy lifting for this season, as you are in for a fucking ride. Coffin Run follows a group of, let's say, not quite human individuals, acting at the behest of the one and only Dracula. This season has the energy of a wacky Halloween one-shot you run with your friends, but expanded into a whole adventure. It's pure comedic momentum and chaos, captured in the rules of 5th edition, with a splash of homebrew to match the setting. And as for how this show changes things up,
the Dark Lord is coming.
The great Count Dracula. Daddy's back. Are you ready, Fangang?
this is her first time in the chair, and I absolutely hope they bring her back. She's a very talented dungeon master all around, but her voice work is to die for. I also love how a lot of the miniatures and sets are made in near monochrome to match the aesthetic of classic era monster movies. And can we talk about the train? I love the train. While everyone's characters are fantastic, a special shout out has to go to Izzy Rowland and Erika Ishii, as I don't know if I've ever seen two characters just sell so hard. It's a season on the wackier side, but that should be a surprise to absolutely nobody. The genre lends itself greatly to absurdity and improv. While there is no bad time to bring on the Halloween vibes, if you're the kind of person who likes some camp in their spooky season, this is a fun and short series to pop on and just go along for the wild ride. A Court of Fae and Flowers. Get ready for D&D, tea, and Regency. If you watched Bridgerton and thought, you know what this needs? Archfey and miniature goblins. Then do I have the show for you. A Court of Fae of Flowers is a notable D20 season for a few reasons. While not Aubrey's first time DMing, this is her first time in the Dome as a 5th edition Dungeon Master. The game itself follows a grand social gathering of the Fae Courts known as the Bloom. This may be one of the hardest seasons to pitch or describe without giving anything away, but it may also be one of my favorite seasons personally. The Regency-specific homebrew mechanics added to the game are to die for, and while there is some combat in the show, it's not what I would call the main focus. We are in full theater of the mind, with the majority of the art budget going into either the beautiful set design or the gorgeous dresses and outfits we see the players wear throughout the show. While combat is sparse comparatively, this is one of the higher level seasons mechanically. So between the higher spell slots and the focus on roleplay and problem solving, you get to see magic that is new to the series and spells used in ways that you normally wouldn't see. This is a Regency-inspired show, so you can expect a feast of fancy accents, rumors, secrets, and romance. Aubrey has stated in the build-up to this that she assembled her dream team for the season, and it shows. While all are remarkable role players, you have to shout out when Brennan gets the opportunity to actually play. And this may be my and many people's favorite character of his. Despite its high level in-game mechanics, the approach throughout is quite welcoming from a gameplay perspective. Most complicated spells are explained in-game, and rarely does an understanding of a specific rule get in the way of enjoying the high fantasy Regency realness. Outside of the obvious recommendation for the Regency fans out there, this may in fact be the best season as far as social roleplay in Dimension 20's history, and I absolutely recommend this all-star pick.
Ladies, stealth check time.
Dungeons and Drag Queens. I'm not going to bury the lead here. This season is nothing short of a miniature masterpiece. The name really does say it. 4 all-star drag queens embark on their very first Dungeons and Dragons campaign on camera in front of thousands of people. This may be the absolute best season for new players to start with, not only for people who are new to Dimension 20, but those new to tabletop. There is something so special about this season in following the journey of these queens learning the game. If you're new to the game, there's a huge benefit to seeing someone on one of these shows, asking questions, discovering strategies, and learning for themselves what makes this game so incredibly fun. It's only a 4-episode season. As much as I would have loved more, it does make it extremely digestible and even bingeable if you have the day cleared out for it. If you know these queens, you know what to expect. The energy of these players absolutely helps supplement their admitted lack of tabletop experience. The deep friendship these players share allows them to achieve inspiring camaraderie one moment and read each other to filth the very next. While the most tactical and wargamey of audiences may find this season lacking, this season is an absolute must-watch. It's short enough for a quick watch, and is now my #1 recommendation for people getting into the actual play scene. Mentopolis. I didn't realize that tabletop Osmosis Jones meets Inside Out as a crime noir was something I needed in my life. But here we are. Mentopolis is a noir adventure using the Kids on Bike system, taking place inside the body of a man in mysterious circumstances. Each of the players inhabits a mental concept inside of his brain and finds themselves teaming up in order to address some sudden and mysterious changes in the body. While Mice and Murder was our first dip into noir elements, Mentopolis dives into the deep end, and every character finds their own unique way to play out their noir experience. While understanding the various mental or anatomy references in the show helps, it's far from inhibiting. As for the vibes of this show, it's hard to avoid spoilers, but you should know by now to expect the notable aspects of the genre mixed in with some dropout signature chaos. As said with the other seasons, the Kids on Bikes coded seasons are extremely easy to follow from a mechanical perspective. While we don't find traditional battles, the larger conflicts of the show are compelling and action-packed. The season as a whole has so much fun with the tropes of its premise. Without giving anything away, there are some surprises in terms of art that absolutely elevate the experience. Also, a quick shout out to our 3 new characters. We have Alex Songja appearing for the first time, coming back later on and never stop blowing up. Freddie Wong, who has seemingly the time of his life during this season. And Hank Green, who is not someone who I expected to see in this show, but absolutely hope he comes back. It's a short season with a very unique vibe and a cast of mostly first-timers with great chemistry. Mentopolis is a subdued, slow, but solid good time. Burrow's End. This season is my childhood. Burrow's End is another Aubrey-led season and harkens back to the world of 80s animal animated adventure movies like Watership Down and Secret of Nim. We follow a family of stoats, a British animal that I honestly did not know of before. They are forced early on to embark on an adventure to see what dangers the world carries outside of their underground home. This is once again an extremely easy season to spoil, but here are some reasons why you might enjoy it. The dynamic of having an entire table playing close family is so immediately compelling, and it makes the danger feel immediately more intense. Without giving too much away, the scaling of playing as small animals in a humanoid-sized world, they have a lot of fun with the battle sets. Some of my absolute favorites in Dimension 20. It's really hard to pick a favorite character this season, but just from episode 1, seeing everyone's characters and who they're deciding to play, you just fall in love with everybody. It's frustrating not to feel like there's much I can say spoiler-free about this season, but take my word for it. If you love this cast, if you love this aesthetic, this season is a great adventure with a solid mix of heart, mystery, and that kids movie nightmare fuel that only the 1980s could provide. Never stop blowing up. If there was ever a season that was custom built from my soul, this would be it. To anyone who's a fan of me on the channel and has seen the Jacob Wysocki effect, it is a surprise to absolutely nobody that I love Never Stop Blowing Up. This series is an out-of-control, high-octane homage to the world of action cinema. In fact, I really like the way I summed it up in the video essay, so can we just roll that clip? The story follows a small group of people working at or around a failed movie rental store. A mysterious old man comes into the store with a magical VHS that sucks them inside one of the most over-the-top and out-of-control action movies ever created. Never Stop Blowing Up. Now, in what's basically an American isekai series, Each player's character is placed inside the body of an action hero tied to their inner spirit. I absolutely love this premise. Not only does this mean that we essentially have each player playing two different characters, but it also creates a really interesting meta perspective of players playing characters that themselves are playing characters. This is extremely notable for Dimension 20 history, as this is run in basically their own system. The bones of it definitely function in the Kids on Bike style, with dice pools correlating to skills, but the rules quickly build into their own system from there. By far, this is the most out-of-control season ever. Benefited by full theater of the mind, they leaned hard into improv, and Brennan openly stated that he went into the season willing to give his players more control than they ever had before. And without spoiling exactly what that means, they absolutely accomplished that task. There is a surprising amount of drama and heart mixed in here, but as far as expectations, I think Brennan says it best.
Let me be clear what the vibe is this season.
As far as a tryout of new mechanics, I think they absolutely show the power of this new game system. It keeps the pace and energy up and handles combat surprisingly well for not using standard ACs or hit points. I've heard from some people the pure amount of chaos energy can be a bit much, and I totally get that. It's a season with a very distinct and pungent flavor, and it helps to know if you like that flavor before you take it as a full pie to the face. It's never stopped blowing up for you. Well, the best thing I can say about it is that it's very clear about what it is. If the vibes flow with you, go wild. But if the trailer doesn't gel with you, the series is not likely going to change your mind. As far as shouting out characters season by season, it should be a surprise to nobody that I'm a huge fan of Jacob Wysocki's performance in this show, as the Jacob Wysocki effect existed because I was so excited to talk about it. So if you want to hear me talk more about Jacob Wysocki in this particular show, I suggest checking out the Jacob Wysocki effect, located elsewhere on my channel. And there you have it, our epic side quest is complete. So what are your thoughts? Is there a season you'd like to see me review proper? Should I make videos about the larger seasons? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that crazy stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Till next time.